the sheriff's, what? Few movies in history could make an entire theater burst into laughter and shock at the exact same moment. Released in 1974, Blazing Saddles didn't just break the rules of comedy. It burned them down, danced on the ashes, and rode away on a horse. This wasn't just another Western. It was a revolution, a loud, chaotic, politically incorrect, and somehow brilliant reflection of America, satire, and cinema itself. And today, we're diving deep into 20 weird, hilarious, and downright unbelievable facts about Blazing Saddles, from scenes that nearly got banned to the hidden genius behind every absurd moment. So, saddle up, because we're about to ride straight into Mel Brooks' wildest movie ever made. Number 1, the title almost wasn't Blazing Saddles. Before Blazing Saddles became Blazing Saddles, the studio was juggling a list of rejected titles that could have derailed history. Among them were Black Bart, Tex-Ex, and even The Purple Sage. Mel Brooks once joked that if Warner Brothers had gone with Tex-Ex, people would have thought it was an X-rated Western starring Malcolm X.
Blazing Saddles, for me, was a film that truly broke ground.
Ultimately, Blazing Saddles was chosen because it sounded like a Western, but funnier. It struck that perfect blend of parody and frontier charm, a name that could only belong to something both ridiculous and legendary. Number 2, the script had 5 writers and constant chaos. If you thought one comedy genius was enough, think again. Blazing Saddles had 5 writers, including Mel Brooks, Norman Steinberg, Andrew Bergman, Al Uger, and the brilliant Richard Pryor. Yes, that Richard Pryor. Pryor's influence was enormous. He infused authenticity into the film's racial satire, ensuring the humor never lost its truth. He was originally supposed to play Sheriff Bart himself, but the studio refused, fearing he was too controversial.
I wanted Richard Pryor to play the lead. But I said, wait a minute, Richard's smart. Maybe we'll make Richard.
Mel Brooks said later, they were right. He was controversial, and that's why he was perfect. Number 3, Cleavon Little wasn't the first choice for Bart. When Richard Pryor was denied the role, Mel Brooks had to find someone who could deliver both charm and bite. Enter Cleavon Little, a Juilliard-trained actor with razor-sharp comedic timing. His smooth charisma brought balance to the film's absurdity.
By the power vested in me, by the Honorable William J. LaPetitmain.
Brooks later said, Cleavon could disarm the audience with a smile before dropping a punchline that hit like a freight train.
It was like writing the show of shows again. It was all being in a room.
And let's be honest, his swagger as Bart gave the movie its heartbeat. Number 4, Gene Wilder joined at the last minute. Originally, the role of the Waco Kid was offered to Gig Young, but on the very first day of shooting, things went off the rails. Young was suffering from severe alcohol withdrawal and collapsed on set. Production halted, panic ensued, so Brooks called in a favor to his good friend Gene Wilder. Wilder agreed instantly. He flew in, shot his scenes.
You gotta remember that these are just simple farmers. These are people of the land.
And transformed the Waco Kid into a calm, tragic, yet hilarious counterbalance to Bart's energy.
I don't know if you ever heard of me before, but I used to be called...
That slow, drunken drawl, pure improvisation.
Look at that. Steady as a rock. Yeah, but I shoot with this hand.
Brooks later admitted that Wilder's entrance single-handedly saved the movie. Number 5, the town of Rock Ridge was completely built from scratch. Unlike many westerns that reused old sets, the town of Rock Ridge was a custom-built creation in the middle of the California desert. Every single building, from the saloon to the church, was real, not a facade. And yes, it was so realistic that people driving by thought it was an actual 1800s town. Mel Brooks joked that a few tourists even stopped, hoping to buy land. But there's a twist. During the film's final chaotic meta scene, the entire set had to be destroyed. They only had one shot to nail it, and they did. Number 6, the film almost got shelved for being too offensive. Even in the freewheeling 1970s, Blazing Saddles pushed boundaries no one else dared to. The studio's early test screenings were a disaster. Executives were horrified by the racial jokes, the slurs, the breaking of every Hollywood rule imaginable. One Warner Brothers exec told Brooks flat out, "You'll never get away with this."
When they saw the rough cut of Blazing Saddles, the people who ran Warner Brothers.
But then, something wild happened. Audiences loved it. The laughter was explosive, the word of mouth unstoppable. And suddenly, the movie the studio tried to hide became a cultural phenomenon. Number 7, Mel Brooks fought censors tooth and nail. Brooks has said he spent months battling studio censors over nearly every scene. They wanted to cut the infamous bean-eating campfire sequence.
How about some more beans, Mr. Taggart? I'd say you've had enough.
They wanted to tone down the town's absurdly honest dialogue. And they definitely wanted to remove the Candygram for Mongo bit.
Candygram for Mongo. Candygram for Mongo.
Brooks refused. He argued, the whole point of the movie is to show how stupid racism, and the people behind it, really are. By the end, he got his way on almost everything. And in doing so, redefined what Hollywood comedy could be. Number 8, the horses were better paid than some extras. Here's a wild one. During filming, the horses had professional stunt insurance, but several of the human extras didn't. That's right, the horses were literally better protected than the people. The reason? Blazing Saddles was full of dangerous slapstick sequences, stampedes, explosions, and pratfalls. Animal welfare groups were strict about safety, while human stunts were handled the old-fashioned way. One crew member even said, "If you could walk away, you weren't hurt. That's how we knew you were fine." So yes, it was a chaotic shoot, but somehow nobody got seriously injured. Well, except for a few egos. Number 9. Mongo's horse punch was totally real, almost. Ah yes, the unforgettable scene where Mongo, played by Alex Karras,
Hey, you can't park that animal over there. It's illegal.
punches a horse square in the face. That moment has gone down as one of the most ridiculous and beloved gags in movie history. While it looks brutal, it was executed perfectly. The horse was trained for stunt work, and the punch was carefully choreographed with a hidden prop arm.
Never mind that shit. Here comes Mongo. Continue.
But here's the kicker. Brooks said in interviews that several people thought it was real. He got angry letters from animal lovers for years after release. As Brooks later joked, "If I could punch like that, I'd have been a boxer, not a director." Number 10. Harvey Korman. Nearly stole the entire movie. When Harvey Korman stepped onto set as the villainous Hedy Lamarr, everyone knew the movie was about to get weird. Korman, a comedy veteran from The Carol Burnett Show, brought such energy to his role that entire scenes had to be reshot because the crew couldn't stop laughing. He improvised so much that Mel Brooks just let him run wild. That over-the-top line,
My mind is a raging torrent, flooded with rivulets of thought.
and yes, he hated when people accidentally called him Hedy Lamarr. In fact, the real actress Hedy Lamarr actually sued the studio for using her name in the film. Brooks settled the lawsuit and said it was worth every penny. Number 11. Madeline Kahn's legendary audition was one of a kind. Mel Brooks knew he needed someone who could match the movie's outrageous tone. And then came Madeline Kahn. Her audition for the role of Lily von Stupp
Won't you excuse me for a moment while I slip into something a little bit more comfortable?
was so funny that Brooks called it the moment I realized this movie could actually work. She didn't just act. She performed a full mini cabaret in the room, complete with ad-libs and sultry improvisations.
Why don't you, loosen your bullets?
Her breathy, half-asleep performance of I'm Tired wasn't a gag. She actually made the voice up on the spot, mocking old Hollywood starlets. Brooks called her the funniest woman I've ever met. And audiences agreed. Kahn earned an Oscar nomination for the role. Number 12. Mel Brooks played 3 different characters. You probably remember Mel Brooks as the loud, obnoxious Governor William J. Lepidemain. But that wasn't his only role.
Will be a giant step forward in the treatment of the insane gambler.
He also voiced the Yiddish-speaking Indian chief and appeared briefly as a German soldier during the chaotic final fight.
Has die gesehen in deiner Leben? They darker than us.
Brooks said he couldn't resist jumping in front of the camera. Directing is great, he joked, but getting to make faces on film is even better. It was a trademark Brooks move, breaking the fourth wall long before it became trendy. And somehow, it made the whole movie feel even more like a live-action cartoon. Number 13. The bean scene made history, and enemies. You can't talk about Blazing Saddles without mentioning that campfire scene. Beans, cowboys, and a symphony of sound effects that had theater audiences gasping for air. At the time, flatulence jokes were considered taboo, never done in major motion pictures. Brooks said, "I wanted to make high art out of low comedy."
Cowboys swill black coffee and eat unconscionable amounts of beans on these tin plates.
Mission accomplished. The scene was so controversial that some theaters actually cut it for being indecent, but audiences howled with laughter. And decades later, it's recognized as one of the most iconic comedy scenes in history. Number 14. The movie broke the fourth wall before it was cool. That ending, where the fight spills off the set into the studio lot and even into a musical number, was pure cinematic chaos. Brooks wanted to show Hollywood for what it really was, a machine pretending to be art. It was his way of saying, "You're watching a movie and we know it." The final chase, from the fake Western town to the real studio commissary, cost a fortune and confused the studio executives. They begged him to cut it, but Brooks refused, calling it the funniest thing I've ever written. When the Waco Kid and Bart ride off into the sunset, then get into a car and drive away, it was Brooks's ultimate mic drop on Hollywood convention. Number 15. Brooks hid deeper. Meanings in the madness. Underneath all the slapstick chaos, Blazing Saddles was a film with purpose. Mel Brooks wanted to expose the absurdity of racism, not by lecturing, but by laughing at it. He once said, "If you can laugh at something evil, you rob it of its power."
Blazing Saddles was one of a kind. I mean, it'll stand for all times as a monumental American.
Every exaggerated racist, every over-the-top villain was designed to look stupid, not funny. That was the genius of the film. It wasn't mocking the victims, it was mocking the ignorance itself. That subtext helped the movie age far better than anyone predicted, making it a case study in how comedy can confront culture. Number 16. The studio tried to censor everything. Even after Brooks won his censorship battles, Warner Brothers executives were still nervous. They wanted to remove multiple scenes, tone down language, and even add an opening disclaimer warning audiences. Brooks refused. He argued that satire loses its edge the moment you explain it. So he fought for every joke, every controversial line, and won. Later, he joked, "If I made it today, they'd probably try to cancel the entire studio. But back then, we just made people laugh and think at the same time." Number 17. The premiere was utter chaos. The first public screening of Blazing Saddles took place in a test theater in San Luis Obispo, California, and no one was prepared for what happened. Within minutes, the crowd was howling with laughter. People were literally falling out of their seats. The projectionist had to pause the film because the laughter was drowning out the dialogue. When it ended, the audience stood and applauded for nearly 5 minutes. Mel Brooks said it was the loudest reaction he'd ever witnessed, like a rock concert for comedy. Warner Brothers executives were stunned. The movie they almost buried was about to become a phenomenon. Number 18. Critics didn't know what to do with it. Despite audience love, critics were divided. Some hailed Blazing Saddles as a masterpiece of satire. Others called it crude, tasteless, and offensive. But history proved the audience right. In the decades that followed, the movie was added to the National Film Registry for being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. It's now studied in film schools as an example of how to push boundaries with intent.
Well, I wasn't there at the inception, in the writing stage, but that was one of the things that made me want to do the film.
As Gene Wilder once said, it was never about being rude. It was about being real and finding truth through laughter. Number 19. It spawned a sequel, sort of. Here's a lesser-known secret. Blazing Saddles technically got a sequel, just not in the way you'd expect. In 1975, Brooks co-wrote an animated spin-off called Black Bart, meant to continue the story of Sheriff Bart.
Oh, baby, you are so talented, and they are so dumb.
Only one episode was ever produced. Why? Warner Brothers decided it was too controversial for television. The footage vanished into studio archives for decades, until clips resurfaced years later on YouTube, turning it into a cult curiosity among fans. So yes, Blazing Saddles almost became a Saturday morning cartoon. Let that sink in. Number 20. Mel Brooks once called it too crazy to be made today. Brooks has said in countless interviews that Blazing Saddles could never be made now. Not because audiences wouldn't laugh, but because studios wouldn't take the risk. The movie thrived on discomfort. It made people confront prejudice through laughter, and that's what made it powerful. In one of his later interviews, Brooks said, "Comedy is a mirror, sometimes cracked, sometimes dirty, but always showing us who we are."
We just use it as a basis to make fun of people.
And that's the legacy of Blazing Saddles. Beneath the bean jokes and slapstick mayhem lies a daring piece of art that changed how we laugh and why we laugh. Almost 50 years later, Blazing Saddles still rides tall, outrageous, fearless, and timelessly funny. It's the kind of movie that reminds us why we fell in love with cinema in the first place, because laughter, when done right, can outlive any controversy. So, what's your favorite moment from Blazing Saddles? Was it Mongo and his horse, the Bean Symphony, or the fourth wall-breaking finale that shattered movie logic forever? Let us know down below. We love reading your takes. And if you're the kind of movie lover who rewatches the classics not just for nostalgia, but for the stories behind them, well, you're already part of the Rewatch Club. Until next time, keep your saddle blazing.